And so today, Michele and Dominic will host Kevin Skelly coming out. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you.
I think
Somebody will work, yes.
There we go.
Great. So, Dom, it's nice to see you in a tie.
Yeah, I figured it was my one opportunity to upstage the superintendent.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to dress like Mr. Rogers, but I'm not going to change my shoes. Before we start, I want to thank you two for leading this effort and putting all this together. I know it was a ton of time, so thank you to both of you for that. And I want to introduce a board member who came today. Linda Lees-Dwyer is standing over next to Kirk. Yeah, now we see you better. We don't have a spotlight to put on you. And we also want to thank the San Mateo High School for hosting us today. And we got a chance to use some of their set here, I think, right?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to dive on in. So we're going to start a little bit back when you actually were teaching yourself. And in your teaching career, you taught both math and Spanish. So what was your favorite part about teaching math?
Okay, so I taught Spanish only for 1 year, and that was because the school I was at was a Catholic school, and they said, "Oh, you went to Ecuador. Oh, you must be able to teach Spanish. Oh, so we're going to throw you into a Spanish 2 class." So I wouldn't say I was trained as a Spanish teacher, but I did teach math for quite a while, and I love teaching math. I think it's just the most fantastic subject for kids to learn. I think it's a gateway subject. I think there's a discrete answer, which makes grading a lot easier. And I think that, there's just an elegance to math that kids need. And so it was fun.
Very good. Thank you.
So class size often comes up in teachers' conversations. Our district at one time reduced class sizes in both 9th grade math and English. And then due to budget cuts and the lack of achievement data, class size reduction was eliminated. What are your thoughts on the effects of class size on teaching efficacy? And do you think it's feasible for our numbers to decrease across the board?
Okay, so we jump right into the hard questions here.
Sorry. I couldn't resist. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, so class size. A couple of things. One is that I think if you were to ask any parent or to ask yourselves, would you rather be in a class with 20 kids and a mediocre teacher or 30 with a game-breaking, fantastic, remember for 30 years kind of teacher? And I think we know the answer to that. We'd all prefer the larger class size with a great teacher. And so when you think about what matters to kids and matters to their educational experience, it's the game-breaking teacher. So that has to be the thing that we keep in mind all the time. And I know in my conversations, particularly at Aragon, I heard lots of conversations about class size. But I think that if you think about the cost of smaller classes, particularly to make any sort of meaningful difference, you're talking about spending lots and lots of money that I think could possibly be used in other ways like salary enhancements or other programs that benefit kids. So I would like to see us do some things around the margin around class size, but I think we are going to have to suffer through larger classes than we like just because of other initiatives that we want to do. So we're having conversations about staffing right now and look forward to those with principals. But I think if there are changes, they'll be at the margin just because they're so tremendously expensive.
Thank you. All right, so I have the next one. Today's Professional Development Day features workshops focused on students' social and emotional needs in the classroom. What ideas do you have around how we can address students' mental health needs across the district? And what best practices have you seen in other districts?
So I think we're doing a couple things this coming year that I'm excited about. And one is that we're trying to bring some of the mental health providers into our schools as our employees, as opposed to being employees of an outside agency where we have less accountability, if you will, less control over the quality of the staff, and a chance to integrate those folks in better. I think when we think about the mental health of kids, there's a couple of things. I think all of us, if we remember without rose-colored glasses, know that we're dealing with kids during 4 years that are full of enormous change, where they are going to have more mental health issues than they will, we hope, when they get older and wiser and more mature and all those things. And the changes that the kids go through are profound and are tough. And I think part of what we need to tell kids is that, look, if you're expecting your 4 years in high school to always be, sort of a romantic, not romantic in terms of boys and girls, but, just sort of a romantic time in your life, I think that's true. But, all kinds of teenage literature is full of teenage angst and challenges. And so I think we need to have them understand that, that there are going to be times and challenges that they face there. So I think collectively that's a message that we need to send to kids. And then I think we need to let them understand that, mental health is sort of like physical health, and that, sometimes we feel great, and then other times we're not feeling as well as we should, and that we need to reduce the stigma around mental health illness, and I say illness because that's, when you're sick, you're ill, and then also just provide kids, we need as folks to have a system where if we notice kids that are struggling, that we help them, that we get them counseling, that we support them in that way, and that's what a caring adult does, and that's what caring kids do. So that's what I've seen, in previous experiences when we're at our best. And then, I think we need to embrace kids that are struggling with illness. I mean, if a kid had cancer, we'd really, reach out to family, we would support them. But we have sort of a less demonstratively caring attitude sometimes about mental illness. So.
Thank you.
Okay. We talk a lot about student readiness for career in college. Our district send nearly 50% of its graduating class each year to our local community colleges. How do we begin to balance and address the needs of both groups, those who plan to attend community college and or four-year college?
So I think both. Let's start with the cost. I mean, I think one of the when I came to this community, I was surprised at how high that figure was, that there were 50% going to our community colleges. And I think some of that comes down to cost. We serve a lot of families that are middle-class families, and paying for college is a huge endeavor for those who've engaged in it or are thinking about that as parents. And the chance to go for 2 years there is really, great economic, and for many kids, maturity-wise, it's a great thing. But the kids are not having the kind of success at our community colleges that we would like. And I think there are a bunch of reasons that we need to think about for that. And I've had lots of conversations with principals and folks up at the community college district on this. One thing is that the community colleges see their enrollment fall when the economy is good. And so kids are less likely to go to community college and more likely to go into the workforce when the economy is good. And so, if you're a family of modest means and you're an 18-year-old kid, the lure of going to a place and earning $12 or $13 an hour and being part of a work community and making contributions to your families is really strong. But those are the 6 years that kids spend, 18 to 24, are the most productive years they can have in terms of going to school. And so that income that they've earned is perhaps robbing them of opportunities to really have a middle-class job or a job that's going to really support them. So how do we encourage our kids to get a start on that? And so some of the conversations that we're having is, are there ways to encourage kids who know they're in their junior year, hey, I'm going to Skyline or I'm going to College of San Mateo, to start taking some classes so that when they start there, instead of having 60 units to go, they've got a running start, and so they're at, only 54 or 48 units that they need to go. And so I think that's one thing that we need to think about. The community college district is starting to look at multiple measures for having kids avoid remedial classes. And when a kid has to take a remedial class, they're taking classes that don't earn them any credit at all when they start there. So you can imagine if you're a kid making some decisions and you don't have a long-range view, you may make decisions to say, I'm going to go work and not take those community college classes because I'm not earning any credit. And so if we can more align our courses to what's going on at the community college, give them some courses that they'll be successful in before they go there, then they've got a running start there. I think for our kids that are going to four-year schools, we've got a great counseling department that really supports kids there and makes sure that the kids are taken care of, social, emotional, academic choices, career choices. And parents are typically more dialed in. Now, four-year schools are super complicated as well to figure out all the pieces, whether it's FAFSA or all those pieces. But, I think because the four-year college track is so complicated, we don't talk as much about the community colleges as we could or perhaps should. And then, I think, the community colleges need to do a better job of making their placement tests more rational or more, not so esoteric in terms of their questions. So there's all kinds of conversations going on there. But it would be, given that we have 50%, in many ways, that transition to 12th to 13th grade should be as easy as from 8th to 9th, if you will. And so there's lots of articulation work. And Hillsdale is doing some particular things this year in terms of working with the College of San Mateo that we'd like to spread to all the schools in the district in terms of that transition.
Thank you.
We're going to change a little bit from talking about kids to talking a little bit about staff and teachers. And many local school districts are grappling with attracting and retaining teachers. The cost of housing, both renting and buying, seem to be becoming distant dreams for teachers. And according to our recent district housing survey, approximately 59% of the respondents indicated that the cost of housing would impact their ability to stay in the area. You've spoken at length about teacher housing. What are your thoughts about salary and benefits for our teachers as the cost of living continues to increase in the peninsula?
Okay. We're right next to negotiating season. And I think that a couple things. When a great teacher, and they're not great yet, but when they're 23, 24, and they're getting their start, and you can tell who's going to be a fantastic teacher, who's going to be the teacher that you want for the next 30 years. We as a district have to win that teacher. That teacher has to choose to come to our district. And if we get mediocre teachers, the difference between getting a fantastic teacher and a mediocre teacher is huge. And so part of that certainly is compensation, right? We're fortunate here that from a competitive salary schedule, we're close to everybody, but we want to be ahead of everybody else. And so compensation is a huge deal. And so we talked about class size earlier and salary, and I think that's making decisions around making sure our salaries are absolutely competitive is really important. We are fortunate to have an underutilized resource in this district up at Crestmore. That's a site that has 45 acres. We have a school that used to be 2,000 kids. It's now 250. We want to move Peninsula down to a more central location where kids who go there can easily go to school there, and they can start school at different times or have a variety of different programs. And then we've acquired some land over on Hinckley to bring the maintenance and operations folks closer down here. So we need to think about, first of all, how do we use that land well? And so we could build housing there. And the area is zoned for housing, and we could do that. The challenge is I'm not sure how many of our younger teachers want to live up in San Bruno. I think the hipster generation that we're trying to attract to go into teaching, they often want to live closer to the transit arteries and closer down here. So are there potential to use that land, to trade that land, to find housing down here that would be available for staff? And so those are conversations that take a long time, but we need to think about that strategically, because I think if we could offer folks a chance to live here in an area where they could rent for less, that would really improve our ability to attract and retain the best staff. I think also that teachers want to work in an atmosphere that's tremendously collaborative, where they like their colleagues, where the schools have a sense of community, where people look out for each other, that folks care deeply about kids, but they also care about each other. And so if somebody's got issues going on in their family, that people are looking out for them. And I've been really impressed so far as I go around to the schools and see folks about the sense of community that exists in our schools. And it's really valuable and something that we constantly need to help improve and make better. So you talk about housing, you talk about salaries, and you talk about the sense of community. And then finally, I think chances to grow. Today is about that, right? Where we're building a culture where everybody is dedicated to the proposition that, I'm a good teacher, I've got great colleagues, but I need to get better in order to meet the needs of kids.
Thank you. It's a good question. It's on many of our minds. Mm-hmm.
So our district invests both human and financial resources into PD, as we were just discussing, and today is evidence of its commitment. What do you see as the most important parts of professional development for teachers?
Okay, so in here are a bunch of folks who have taken the chance to present their own skills, to share some of the things they do in the classroom. That's a scary proposition in lots of ways, right? To expose yourself to your colleagues and say, hey, here's some of the things that I do well. And then I think, in terms of our professional development, so it's so important, I think, that we are humble about sort of what we're doing. We can believe that we're good, but I've seen the best teachers, the research says, and we sort of know, are the ones who say, this is good, but I need to do better. I need to change my teaching some because the kids are changing, because the curriculum that we're asked to do, whether it's an AP course or Common Core or whatever, is changing, and what I do isn't as good as it needs to be, and I need to get better every single day. And then I think we talk about technology, and technology. I think we're getting better as in terms of our institutional capacity around technology, but there's still more that we can do, and I think we need to be open to continuing to grow. Our kids are always going to be a step ahead of us in this area, but we need to figure out ways to get better in terms of using technology and then communicating with technology, whether it's to parents or to kids or whatever. And I think the fact of the matter is that all of our world is moving digital, right? Kids are going to want to know how they're doing in terms of in your class, are there, the grading program. They're going to want to know, maybe not real time up to the second like your bank account, but they're going to want to know how they're doing in your class, and their parents are going to want to know. That's going to be something that we're going to increasingly face, is that parents are going to want to have updates on that. And so I think we have to adopt a mindset of we're learning all the time, our kids are changing, how can we get better, and how do we recognize that there are people on our staff that really have some things that can help us become better teachers. And I don't think we're always as open. We're open to sharing what we're doing, but really sort of say, you know what, that teacher does this, and that really works well for kids that would work well in my classroom.
Thank you. So let's talk about sleep. Okay. So last week I read an editorial in the San Mateo Times, written by you, about the importance of sleep, and I totally am lacking in sleep in the last 2 weeks. So I am not yet heeding your advice, but we'll fix that soon. But we also know that the Board of Trustees recently approved the installation of stadium lights as well. And so I'm curious to know, and I think we're curious to know, if these are two, kind of the article and the approval are kind of preludes to the changing of the start of the school day.
Okay, so it's easier to write about sleep than it is to actually practice good sleep hygiene.
True statement.
Especially before like this, when you get up in front of like all these people and talk, and you're nervous and don't sleep well.
We didn't sleep well.
But I think sleep is so important, right? I think when you sleep well, you're better to the people around you. You feel better about yourself. I think there's. You can see many cases where people who don't sleep well are mentally ill, or there's a relationship there, and so we do have to. And I think it's one of the things that we can do that's nice to ourselves, right? It's good, it's something you can do that takes care of yourself, right? But to go back to lights and start times, this community has so many things going for it, but the fact that it doesn't have lights for the fields was sort of an anomaly, I thought, when I came here. And a lot of work had been done on that. And then Sherry Costabetis and some other people and the principals, we really pushed for lights because we want the kids in class, first and foremost, right? If they're missing for athletic events, or they don't take a 7th period, or they miss 7th period or 6th period because they're playing sports, that's not good. But the idea of starting school later is something that we're going to have a community conversation about. But I think the research around kids and their sleep patterns, and for those of you who've had teenagers know, they like to stay up. I mean, they don't like to go to sleep. And when your kids are young, they'll go to bed when you tell them. And teenagers are less likely to do that, and they live in a world where they're constantly bombarded with social media, and they're on social media. And so, but I also think that just, when I was in Palo Alto and my kids, they moved the school time back a little bit, the difference was enormous for many kids. Now, other kids like to get up early. They probably have the farmer's gene in them, but they like to get up. And I think we need to continue to look at 0 periods for kids who are different, because not all of us benefit. But there's the research, I think, is super compelling around for the vast majority of kids, getting up later is good. And then I know that for staff there'll be issues around child care for your own kids, or commutes, or things like that we're going to have to work on and think about. But I think a start time of 8:30 feels sane, more reasonable, and healthier. The whole valley is going to a sort of a later start time, but so I think we're due for that kind of change as well.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of the Valley, here we are in the Bay Area, this home of innovation and creativity and problem solving, and we have some bold challenges ahead of us. How do we work together to kind of make the district future ready and improve?
So, having worked down in the Valley for most of my professional career, one of the things that we have a community that's full of engineers, and I think they're always looking to tweak this. Oh, couldn't the schools be better if you did X? Or couldn't you do something a little different here and meet the needs of kids differently? And so I think almost more than any other area, we are in a community where we're going to get pushed by our parents and our community to do better. And I think that's a great thing in lots of ways. It makes for hard work sometimes, and an engineer's mind, my dad's an engineer, he's really good at telling me things that I should do better and different. but not always good at telling me, the things that I was doing great or being particularly complimentary. And I think that's true of our community, that we don't often take the time to say, lots of the good things that are going on here. And as I've been around to see classrooms in this district, I'm struck by how good so much of the instruction is and how much people are pushing themselves to serve kids well. So I want to go back to mindset first and say that we have to continue to think all the time about where are our kids going to be and what's their world going to be like. And then in terms of technology and other ways that we can push ourselves, we're trying to get more and more technology into the classroom so that it's not a place that you go to find to use technology, but it's built in seamlessly through the CALs or through the having computers in the classroom, Chromebooks there, and we've done some things. We need to do more of those pieces and add that. And then I think in terms of technology, we also have to think about the kids who don't have technology at their home or ready access to technology, because that's really going to be something that's going to hold them back as they move forward. I was talking to a teacher just as I came in here of newcomers who, they literally don't know how to write something in capital letters on a computer. And so, there's this great digital divide that we also have in terms of the skill set of our kids. And those are going to be things that really shape the kinds of experiences and the kinds of opportunities that our kids have. And if we don't provide those that technology access, then our kids are going to really suffer as they move forward. So I think that I think so many of you have seen that we've made a we made an MOU here in the middle of the year with the union. We settled this year around benefits in September, October. And then the board recently passed another MOU that raises the compensation for professional development. And I think the reason that we did that is because we're only going to be as good as the teachers that are in this room, right? We can't hire new teachers to get better, even if we wanted to, right? The folks that are going to make the difference in kids' lives are sitting in this room right now. And so unless we all get better at what we're doing, then the experience of our kids is not going to get better either. So so it's just so vitally important that we're really engaged in thinking about ways that we can meet the needs of our kids better. And I know that we talked about social, emotional, technology, and working with our staffs and being collaborative and thinking about kids just as much as we think about the material that we'd like for kids to get. The 4 years that they spend with us they go by like that, and they're just such precious times in kids' lives, and we have to really swing hard to do our best for them.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everyone also and thank you to Kevin, and thank you for as well as submitting questions to me that we could ask Kevin today. And I think, we've talked a little bit about as well, like, if you have questions and you would like to talk with Kevin, absolutely send him an email and about anything that might come to your mind or what have you. But I'll give you the last
And then
word.
also, as a superintendent, you have to sort of invent excuses to come to site sometimes, right? So, okay, I'll bring ice cream over, or I'll go over and bug somebody about the master schedule or things like that, or rallies or plays. But when as superintendent, you don't get to spend as much time with kids or seeing kids as you'd like. So invite me over or stop by and have a conversation, or if there's something in particular you'd like to talk about, that's great. And I'll try to get out to sites as much as I can. But I know I speak for all the people in the district office. We're hungry for opportunities to see what you're doing and see where things really happen. It's not at 650 North Delaware, that's for sure. It's right in your classrooms.
Well, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for today.
Yeah, thanks,
All right,
Kevin.
thank you. Yeah, so we originally talked about this where I was just going to talk for 40 minutes, and oh, that would have been a killer. So this wasn't too bad. Thank you, Michele, Tom. All right.